Hiya, my name is Kyle Broad and I am Program Manager of the HND Games Design and Animation course. At the moment you guys are doing level 3 animation, but you're looking to bump up to the second year in September, and which I'll be teaching you. So sorry I can't be there today, but I'm kind of teaching you from the internet and showing you some new things that you'll be doing and how we're advancing your animation skills in the second year. So to kick things off, you've been looking at the basic principles of animation throughout your first year. So if we have a look at this, we can see that I'm on, you may have seen this website before or through your research seen this website. And this website talks about understanding Disney's 12 principles of animation. Okay, so whether you're doing animation for games, VFX, animation for sports, frame by frame animation, the 12 principles of animation are the most important. And really, when it comes to industry, the one thing they look for when it comes to skills-based or software-based skills is always looking for the 12 principles of animation. That's the most, that kind of rule that they kind of use as a guide for when they employ new people into apprenticeships, internships, or if you have a full degree, a full-time job role. So we're going to be moving on from this today, but we're always going to be thinking about the 12 principles of animation. And as we get into more professional projects in your second year, when we start researching ideas and creating new ideas for projects and things like that, we've always got to input those 12 principles. It's good analysis, it's good research. It also shows that you're also thinking about those stereotypical principles that need to go into a good enriched animation. So if you look from anything from that's produced on Adult Swim right to Disney and Pixar, you can see the 12 principles of animation embedded within there. So we're going to do a bit more advanced skills from the 12 principles of animation today. We're going to be looking at the kind of the effects and presets and kind of cool little things that you can kind of practice at home if you have Adobe After Effects at home, or you can practice within the classroom today. Obviously, if I'm going too fast, this isn't a live recording, so you can pause this video at any time and go through bits and pieces again. So, as I said, we are in After Effects today. And the first thing we're going to do is have a plane whizzing around with its vapor trails on our screen or within our composition. So first things first is we're going to go to Composition and New Composition. When you click onto that, you get this nice little composition box. Hopefully you've seen this before, which is awesome. What I want you to do is call this flying plane, and we're going to have the stereotypical size, which is going to be 1920 over 1080 pixels. Frame rate, that's quite high, so I'm going to change that to 30 frames per second. That's still quite high. Usually within sort of television, we're looking at kind of 24 frames or 25 frames. But we'll stick, because we want it quite nice and smooth looking, we're going to go with our 30 frames per second. And also my duration of this is only 5 seconds, so that's okay. And we're going to call this flying plane. I'm going to click OK. There we go. So you can see that I've got my composition here. First things first is if we're going to have a plane flying in, we obviously need I'm just going to delete this extra comp that I've got here. Actually, I might just leave it. There we go. That's fine. I'm going to leave that. So we're going to want a plane ourselves. So I've linked below. There should be a little image that you can download or a link to it. It should just be on my desktop here. Lovely, lovely. Let's have a look. There we go. So I'm going to drag this into my project. Lovely. So this is my plane PNG. It's a PNG file, so it's got no background. And what I can do is I'm just going to quickly drag this in. There we go. Fantastic. Cool. So just to make sure this definitely doesn't have a background, we're going to change the background color. So what we're going to do, instead of changing, we could go into our composition settings and change that background color. So we could either go to composition settings, and then change that color. But in our final render and export, if we wanted this as an actual video to put onto YouTube or whatever as a piece of portfolio work, that color of the from the composition settings won't be there. It will work as a background. It will work as an empty background. So what we need to do is go to Layer, New, and Solid. So we can add a solid color into our composition so we have a background. What I'm going to do, there we go, and I'm going to call this background. And I'm just going to change this color to like a sky blue. There we go. Or maybe a bit darker. There we go, lovely. So it's not too harsh. There we go. And obviously this blue is going to take over because if we look in our layers, we can see that the plane isn't on top. So if we click and drag the plane back on top, there we go. Okay, so I want my plane to be whizzing around this scene. And obviously it's a bit big for my liking. So what I'm going to do is go into the settings of this plane. So go to transform, and then we've got anchor point, position, scale. Scale is at 100% at the moment, so I'm just going to scale this down to a size that I'm happy with. So what's that, 40, that's 47, let's type in 50, so it's half the size, lovely. Fantastic, so I'm happy with this size of my plane. Obviously, if you've got a different image or you want to make it look a bit different, by all means, edit it how you please. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is think about where my vapor trail is going to come from for my plane. So because this is just a nice sort of kind of cartoony setting, I'm going to have my vapor trail come from the end of my plane, almost like a rocket booster or something like that, you could say. So what's really important is where everything animates from on an object within After Effects. So everything animates from a certain point, and that point is the anchor point. Okay, so if we zoom into our plane image here, we can see that this is our anchor point here. You can see it almost looks like a target, and rightly so, because that's where everything within our object will start to animate from. Okay, so I would like my vapor trail to animate from my plane. So how can I move this anchor point? Well, that's really, really easy to do. If we go up here with all our different tools in After Effects, we can float above the pan behind, or it says brackets, our anchor point tool. So what I'm going to do is click on this tool here and grab my anchor point and move that. As you can see now, that anchor point is moving around. I'm going to move that to the end of my plane. It's about there. Perfect, fantastic. Really, really happy with that. Cool, so what that now means is everything will animate from this anchor point. So let's go back onto my normal cursor, and I'm going to make sure that I can see my whole screen. Lovely. Cool. So what we're going to do now is make our plane move. And what we can do is that we can create traditional keyframes and bend it and stuff like that, and do easy ease. But there's an easier way to do that, and it's a tool called Motion Sketch. So what we're going to do is initially I want my plane out of the scene, or out of the composition, so it can't be seen. So I'm just going to move my plane to here, and you can still see it because it's got the transform controls around it. And what we're going to do is go up to Window, and we're going to go right down to something called Motion Sketch. So if you haven't used this before, make sure you listen before you go ahead and rush off and do it. See what I do. You can then pause the video, try it yourself. If it goes wrong, you can obviously go back and watch what I do again. So we're going to click on Motion Sketch. And the best thing I can do really with Motion Sketch is show you what I'm doing. I'll show you first and then explain what essentially Motion Sketch does. But you should probably be able to understand it. So what I'm going to do is make sure I can see my wireframe and my background, and I'm going to click Start Capture. And what I'm going to do is, once I click Start Capture, my mouse turns into this almost like little point and arrow, and if I click and drag, you can see that I'm almost dragging that image all the way across, and I'm going to do a loop, There we go. That wasn't quick enough, but let's go Command Z and try that again. So let's go start capture. And as you can see, as I drag my plane, do a loop to loop, out again. There we go. Fantastic. So motion sketch, if we have a look at this, we can see that motion sketch is essentially a drag and drop animation tool. So where I've dragged and done a loop to loop with my plane object, because I've clicked and initially dragged it, motion sketch has essentially recorded the last 4 seconds and created keyframe for every slight piece of movement, as we can see here. So if I do Command and Z one more time to show you, click Start Capture, I'm going to click, drag, loop, and there we go. Cool. And we can even see that, we can even press play and watch our plane do that cool little loop just like that. Cool, so I'll give you a couple of minutes just to do this, or you can pause the video. So again, the motion sketch is all about grabbing, clicking and dragging that object and it creating and recording all of the movement. So easy keyframing, which is really, really nice. Cool. So I'm just going to say, well, I've got 5 seconds. What can I do in 5 seconds? So you can sort of come up, do a loop, and go across again. Cool. I'm happy with that. The keyframes stretch across the 5 seconds. So there we go. Fantastic. So if I press play and let that render through really quickly, it's a bit jumpy, isn't it? It doesn't look that great. Let's make sure we can see this full screen. Yeah, it's a bit jumpy, isn't it? So we can sort that out. So what we can do, let's press play, or press our spacebar so it pauses our scene. And as you can see it is a little bit bumpy. So how can we smooth that out? Well, it's really, really simple. What we can do is go up to Window and go up to the Smoother. And once we click on Smoother, that will also bump just under our motion sketch here. Cool. So let's have a look. Spatial path, yeah, that's what we want. Lovely. And our tolerance, we're going to change that to around 20. And what we're going to do, as soon as I add in 20 and click apply, we can see straight away that that path has been smoothed over. So if we drag our timeline needle back, we can press play and you can see it's now a lot smoother. Awesome. So if you're really not really happy with those lines, what we can do is make sure that we can grab our select tool and we can actually select these handles. Whoops. Make sure we don't double click on that. And come on, there we go. Select these handles and we can smooth out all of these edges here. There you go. So that initial bump is now gone. I may bump this up a little bit. Yeah, that looks good. And loop that, swoop that down like that. Cool, let's have a quick look at that. Press play. Lovely, so that looks way smoother. Cool, lovely. So 2 tools that we quickly learn in quick succession, making our animation processes a lot easier, which is the motion sketch and the smoother tools. So next thing we're going to do is, if we look at this plane again, and as it follows through, it's not, I would like my plane to actually do a loop to loop here, and it's not doing that. It looks a bit kind of static, doesn't it? It doesn't look that great. So what we can do is that we want essentially our plane to appropriately, with its kind of from nose first, follow the path, okay? And we can do that pretty easy. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to, oh, I believe, is it layer? Where is it? Gotta find it. Where is it? Layer, there it is, layer, transform, and auto orient. So what we're going to do, so if you go to layer, transform, auto orient, and what we're going to do is click orient along our path. Click OK, boom, boom, there we go, fantastic. So now, once we play our scene, our plane will do a loop-de-loop and fly off. Lovely. So now the proper object is following our path. So that is still a bit dodgy, that loop there. So we can go and always edit these. Might just smooth that out, see what that does there. See if that looks a bit better. Yes, that's a bit better. So as we can see now, it's non-destructive. And what that means is that we can always edit and change things, which is really nice. So let's have a look at that. Brilliant. Cool. I'm really happy with that. So that's looking really, really nice. So we've animated. Our plane is now following along our path. Now, how can we get to the good bit, the effects? Okay, so first thing we're going to do is you can't just add in an effect onto nothing, otherwise it needs to affect an object. So what we're going to do is add in another solid. So if we go layer, new, and solid, let's call this vapor. I'm going to change the color to a white because obviously it's a vapor trail. Maybe a tad bit of grey into it. Click OK. Lovely. So don't worry about that. That's just the layer going on top. Next thing we're going to go to is our effects and presets on the right hand side. If that's not there for you, don't worry. We can just quickly go to Window and go to effects and presets, and you can click on that. So we go to effects and presets, and what we're looking for is CC Mr. Mercury. So if I just type in CC Mr., we can see we've got CC Mr. Mercury or CC Mr. Smoothie. We're going to go with the Mr. Mercury, and we're going to click and drag that effect onto our vapor layer. Okay, so this is why it's really important to name all of our layers so we know where our effects going. So we're going to drag that onto there. Lovely, fantastic. And you already can see where we're going with this. It almost looks like a milkshake, doesn't it? So if we press play, then it's going to do a bit of a render because it's quite a heavy effect. But you can see that, okay, cool. We've got an effect, almost like a particle system when you first add in your particles. I hope I think you've done particle systems before, so you should understand where I'm coming from with this. But it's obviously looks like almost like milk or milkshake, almost like this frothiness. Okay, so how can we get that to work with our plane? Okay, so what we need to do is have a look at, so at the moment we've got lots of effects here. So let's see if we can calm this down a little bit. So we're going to go with 0 and 0 on both of these radiuses for X and Y. So that should calm it down. We're also going to calm down the gravity. Let's change gravity to 0. And velocity, let's change that to, instead of 1, 0.1. There we go, let's see what that does. Okay, cool, we've got this blob. That's fine. We can work with that. Okay, so now that's rendered through. That does look quite cool though. Okay, so how can we get this working as a vapor trail on our plane? So what we're going to do is that we need to have a look at the effects within our timeline. So let's drag this up and have a look here. So what is animating this is our producer within our CC Mercury. Okay, so we need to link our producer because this is all animated and almost like the milkshake effect. And we need to link it to the movement or the position of our plane because we want it to follow it. And obviously we want it to follow it from where it's animating. So that's why we've moved the anchor point. So what we need to do is drop down our vapor, go to effects, CC Mr. Mercury, and find the producer, which is here. Lovely. Next thing we need to do is find our plane. So if we click up onto our plane, there he is. Click down on there. Oh, click down on there. And let's find position. There we go. So we've already keyframed our position, which is here. So what we're going to do is from producer, we are going to grab our parent and link. So we're going to grab our, where is it? What's it called? There we go. Our pick whip. And we're going to click on this. And when I click, oh, let me just go Command Z. When I click and hold, you can see that I can link the producer of the CC Mercury effect to anything within After Effects. So what I'm going to do is link it to the position. So if I click and drag and then let go on the position, you can already see that effect is kicked in. So let's have a look at that. So let's make sure we can see all the effects. We might have to work on that milkshake effect again because it looks a bit too much. Let's have a look. Let's change that birth rate down to, what's it, 1 at the moment. What will that do? Oh, that made it worse. Let's look at blob birth size. Let's change that to 0.3. Will that help? Oh no, it's making it all a bit too much. So let's bring down that to 0. Let's bring down our longevity. There we go. Oh. Let's have a look at some effects. Velocity 0.1, birth rate is 2. Let's change that to 1, see if that thins it out. Lovely. Let's have a look how that's looking. Oh, it's not too bad actually. I think I could probably work on this birth rate size. We put that at 0. How does that look? Oh, that totally gets rid of our effects. That's not helpful. So let's change that to, if we change that to 0.3, there we go, change that to 0, that's a better effect. Lovely, so let's have a look at that. Awesome, let's let that render through really quickly. Fantastic, so I'm really happy with that. That's looking cool. So we've quickly created, really, if you were creating something maybe for an advert for a holiday program or something like that, this is a really nice, quick, nice little animation you could see at the end of an advert or something like that. So with just a quick couple of effects, it can look really, really professional. Cool, so you can see, just a couple of little things. We can see that the effect is kind of on top, so what we can do is quickly drag it under our plane. Now just render through again. There we go, you can see it's properly under the plane now. Lovely. Cool, so if you want to pause this video and have a look at the effects that I've done. Hopefully you've learned some new skills today and learned some new effects as well. Awesome, lovely. Right, okay, so we've started looking at almost like this kind of drippy effect, almost like a proper exaggeration within the principles of animation, as well as squash and stretch. And maybe looping and overlapping, you could say. So let's see if we can create one more effect today. And we're going to have a look at just sort of what we can do with how effects within After Effects can affect shapes. So just simple shapes. So let's go to, so what you can do, you can save this or create a new one. It would be ideal if you could, instead of like copying my one, create your own, maybe do a bird's eye view of a car I've seen some things on YouTube of a car kind of skidding around and things like that, so that could be represented as smoke. You could anything really that kind of uses the effects that we've learned today. So anything that has motion sketch and the CC Mercury and sees you create your own composition would be absolutely fantastic, and what's needed for September as well. Okay, so composition, I'm going to go to new composition. So we're going to create a brand new one. Let's call this just call this liquid and see where we can go with it. I'm just going to choose soft red background, and then I'm probably going to make this 10 seconds. So I'm just going to write 1000 in there. Click OK. Lovely, and here's our next composition. Brilliant. Okay, so let's have a think how we can do this. Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, so let's grab a shape. Let's grab an ellipse. So if you click and hold down, and we can go to our ellipse tool. I'm going to change the color of this to a nice bright yellow. Lovely. And what I'm going to do is hold shift so I have a nice even shaped sphere. Lovely. Cool. And then I can move this around just like that. Lovely. Cool. You might see that the anchor point isn't in the center. We can repair this by quickly right clicking on the layer, going to transform and center anchor point to layer content. Lovely. Fantastic. Cool. So really nice simple shape. Let's just align this really quickly into the center. Lovely. So next thing we're going to do is what could we do? We could probably make this shape sort of so we're trying to liquid, aren't we? Liquefy it. So the best thing we could probably do, first of all, we're going to name this big blob. Let's name this big blob. So we want this to be liquidy. So I think we're going to have to use a turbulent displace. So what we're going to do is go to effects and presets. And if we type in turbulent, there we go, we find turbulent displace. And we're going to click and drag this onto our big blob circle. And as you can see already, it's created this kind of blobby effect. Let's press play and see what that does. So at the moment, it's not animating. So how do we animate this? Really, really easy. So first of all, we are going to find our evolution, and we are going to create a keyframe for at 0. So this is our first position for our blob, and we are just going to click on that keyframe. And if we click U, we'll be able to see where that keyframe is. So we've created a keyframe at 0, and then what we're going to do is drag this all the way to the end. Hopefully my big head and camera isn't just distracting here. And if I pull this up, actually, we can see what's happening. So I've got a keyframe here at evolution. I've dragged my timeline all the way to the end, and what I'm going to do is change my evolution to, say, 5. See what that does. So we added in 5. If I drag my needle back, let's have a look. How's that? No, it hasn't, because it's 5 degrees, so that wouldn't change anything, would it? Silly me. So what we're going to do, instead of changing it at the degrees, we're going to change it at the X and change that to 5. And then we should have, there we go, we've got our animating gloopy effect. Just let that render through. But fantastic, that's what we're looking for. That's looking really, really nice. Again, we're using the After Effects effects and presets within the system to create these kind of really nice squashing and liquidy kind of effects for After Effects to help with the principles and understanding the principles of animation. So lovely, I'm really happy with that. Cool. So let's just drag this down here so I can see my comp a little bit better. Brilliant. So let's have a think. What could we do with this? Let's create another circle, having it go into our big blob. So let's go grab the same tool, and this time we're going to make this about that big. Cool. Lovely. So we've got our second blob here. Let's call this, let's rename this to small blob. Lovely. And what we're going to do is make that blob go into the big blob and come out again. So we can keyframe that really easily. Oh, I've just renamed the wrong blob. Let's change that. So it's the big blob, and this is going to be small blob. Lovely. So let's keyframe the small blob. This is going to be really, really easy. What we're going to do is go keyframe the initial position, which is there. Drag our needle to the end. I might just lift this up again so you can see what I'm doing with my comp. And then I can quickly drag. Oh, it's decided to animate from the center again, so we need to be careful of that. So what we're going to do is go backwards and make sure our small blob is animating from the center of the layer point. So if we go to transform, center anchor point to layer content, there we go. Lovely. My error, I apologize. So let's start that again. Let's make sure we keyframe position, drag that all the way to the end. And this time I'm going to drag this down. Lovely. So that animates from there to there. Lovely. Let's just make sure that does that. Lovely. Fantastic. So what we need to do is, if we drag this down a little bit, is now I'm going to drag my anchors to go into, there we go, the blob like this. Lovely. So we can watch that like this. So there we go. If we watch that, the blob will go into the big blob and come out again. Lovely. So that's looking really nice, but obviously it's gloopy. So we need to make the small blob gloopy as well. And we want it to kind of gloop into each other and then gloop out again. Okay. So the way we can do that is by, on the small blob, we're going to have to turn on that turbulent displace as well. So if we grab that turbulent displace and click and drag that onto our small blob. And this time we're going to do the same thing again. So drag the needle right back to the beginning. And we're going to keyframe at 0 on the evolution of our blob, of our small blob, and then drag that needle all the way to the end again of our 10 seconds. And this time, again, we won't do it by 5 because it'll look too similar. Let's do it by 3. Press enter. And if we watch this now, let's have a look at this. So it's slowly glooping. Cool. Going into the bigger blob. And then it should gloop out again. Lovely. Cool. That's looking nice. So if we watch that as a full render, going in, coming out again. Cool, lovely. So we've got this really cool effect with just two circles and some effects. Really, really nice and easy. But how can we get this gloopiness? So we want it, when initially my circle goes in, I want it to almost like from this point gloop into, so it's almost like grabbed onto it and glooped into a bigger circle. How can we do that? So what we can do is, or should we change the color first? Should we really, really picky. Yeah, let's change the colour first. Oh no, let's do the sticky thing first. Let's do the sticky thing first and see how that looks and see how much time we've got left. Cool, lovely. So let's go and create an adjustment layer. So an adjustment layer, unlike a normal layer, will affect all the layers below it. So let's go to Layer, New, Adjustment Layer. And let's just call this Sticky. That will help us. Cool. And then we need, what do we need on Sticky? I think we need a fast blur. Let's have a look at all the blurs that we have. I have a radial fast blur. I don't have the other fast blur. That's all right, no problems. That's fine. So let's go to, let's type in fast box blur. Will that work? We'll try. We will experiment. Okay, so let's add the CC fast blur to Sticky and see what options we get. Cool. So we've got amount of 50. What's that? Ah, okay. So let's change that to. Change it to 35. See what we get. And then what we're going to do is add another effect called a simple choker. And this will almost work as a sharpening to the effect. So let's drag that in. And let's set that to 35 as well and see what that does. Cool, lovely. Let's see if we can get a nice gloopy effect. So it should come in and then it should. There we go, fantastic. That's what we're looking for. We can see this glooping effect happening here. It should gloop in, lovely. And then it should, lovely, there we go, gloop out again. There we go, let's render that through. We'll go through slowly initially. So what's happening here with the adjustment layer, the sticky layer, is that the radial fast blur is creating blurred edges around both of our shapes that are animating constantly. But it's then fighting against the simple choker effect, which is essentially a sharpening effect around the edges. So what it does is create this almost like weird kind of gloopiness as it tries to blur but also sharpen at the same time. It creates a gloopiness between both of the shapes and works really well if we want to create a gloopy effect like we want now. But overall, once this fully animates, it creates a really professional and clean looking animation, and overall that's what industry is looking for, that's what your portfolio is looking for, and what you're looking for to do when you want to create animations like this as well. So we're going to watch this full render as it's just about to be done. There we go, and gloop. There we go. Lovely, fantastic, cool. Thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed these first kind of 2 tutorial sessions on looking at effects and presets within After Effects. So for task 1, I want you to create your own vapor trail, car, rocket, speedboat kind of composition scene like we did with the plane. And for this one, I would like you to change the colors. So as soon as that yellow small blob hits the big yellow blob, I would like you to change the colors. Okay, so they blend into each other. So it's almost like a chemical reaction change. And I will look at your results either next week or whenever next you're in. Cool. So I